My name's Melissa Milchman. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. CJJ is a nationwide coalition of state advisory groups and allies dedicated to preventing children and youth from becoming involved in the justice system and upholding the highest standards of care when youth do become justice system involved. I'm joined here by my wonderful partners from the National Youth Justice Network, and I'm going to turn quickly to Tracy Tucker to introduce NYJN.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Tracy Tucker. I'm Executive Director of the National Youth Justice Network, and we are an organization committed to creating anti-racist, healing-centered justice for youth in our communities. And we do this by uniting advocates, activists, organizers, artists, healers, and dreamers behind the long-term cause of deconstructing harmful youth legal systems and building community models of care centered on healing, equity, and youth and family empowerment. So I'm glad to be here and glad to be partnering with CJJ in the opportunity to offer these mini grants to the community. So Melissa, I'll kick it back to you.
Thanks, Tracy. We also have a wonderful partnership with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, or OJJDP, who provided us with the funding to participate and put these grants out. So this disclaimer statement says that the funds that we're utilizing for these mini grants are made available under a cooperative agreement with OJJDP, and that any contents of our presentation is the opinions of CJJ and NYJN and not necessarily those of the Department of Justice. So what are we going to cover in today's webinar? We're going to share with you the background and overview of what the JJDPA 50th anniversary and YJAM is about, share with you our goals and priorities for putting these funds out into our wonderful communities, give an update on our project timeline, and then give you some details about what the application process is going to look like and the requirements to be a mini grantee. We're going to go over examples of possible projects, and we'll have time for QA at the end. So please, if you have a question at any point during the presentation, don't forget it. Please write it in the chat, so we'll have the ability to keep track of any of your questions, and we will have an open Q&A time period at the end where we can answer those questions. So what is the JJDPA, or the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act? We're celebrating 50 anniversaries of the core federal law that provides protections for youth in the juvenile justice system. And it was signed into law in 1974. So this year we're celebrating a big 50th anniversary. That 1974 law also created OJJDP within the Department of Justice and gave them the responsibility of partnering with the states to implement core protections for youth involved in juvenile justice systems. Those protections include deinstitutionalizing status offenders. We commonly talk about this as removing the option for detention for status offenses like running away or being out after curfew. Making sure we separate youth and adults when they're in secure facilities. Making sure we remove youth from adult facilities like jails and lockups, and addressing disproportionate minority contact, which was the original language in the law, but now we call that efforts to reduce racial and ethnic disparities in the juvenile justice system. You can learn more about the history of the JJDPA and how OJJDP is celebrating this 50th anniversary at their website, and we'll be sure to share these slides and these links with you after the webinar today. Youth Justice Action Month, or YJAM, is an annual campaign where advocates come together to organize digital and in-person events and activities to raise awareness and inspire action on behalf of young people impacted by the justice system. So we've had a long history of doing this work, right? From the beginning of the law in 1974. In 2008, Tracy McLeod sought some system reform for her teenage son who was affected by the justice system and passed away. And Ms. McLeod advocated to end prosecution of incarcerated youth in the adult criminal justice system. And that's what sparked the original YJAM, which back then was called Youth Justice Awareness Month. So there's a personal story about how this work got started from the community perspective. When JJDPA was reauthorized in 2018, we actually renamed YJAM to from Youth Justice Awareness Month to Youth Justice Action Month. And this was to encourage advocates and legislators to take more concrete action to show their commitment to youth and improving our systems. And in 2023, President Biden named October as official Youth Justice Action Month. So we celebrate YJAM every October now. But in honor of this really important year, the JJDPA 50th anniversary year, we're kind of celebrating YJAM for a longer period of time. So we're working on celebrating this 50th anniversary, and our activities are going to take place from August through November with our mini grant projects. And YJAM is bigger this year because of the special anniversary. So YJAM every year for 2024 has a theme. CJJ and NYJN are partner annually to support advocates, advisory groups, youth serving organizations, and leaders across the country to plan and implement YJAM and 50th anniversary activities. And our theme this year is Youth Are Worth It. And we're really excited to be activating around our young people this year. So what are the goals and priorities of this mini grant? So we are hoping to make up to 100 awards from $1,000 to $5,000 in amount. Any amount within that range is acceptable. We're going to prioritize top applicants from each state, territory, and tribal community to have the broadest reach possible. Mini grant projects will be implemented anytime between August 1st and November 30th of this year. And we hope that proposals will be centered around raising awareness or increasing engagement for any of the following, right? The Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act and the 50th anniversary, improving the youth legal system, increasing opportunities for system-involved youth, or help participants get involved in supporting system improvement for young people. Preferences will be given to projects that demonstrate that their community is disproportionately impacted by the youth justice system, or that involve youth and families, and or that include providers that feature culturally specific programs. The timeline for the overall project. So here we are. Online applications are open, and the application process is going to be open from April 1st to May 31st, 2024, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In June, we're going to review and score all the applications we receive with a neutral panel of young people, family members, and state advisory group members. We hope to notify everyone who applied about our decision in July. And in August, we hope to kick off award period. And that period will include receiving technical assistance, reporting, and having the events happen all over the country. In September and November, September, October, November, right? You'll have the actual award period. It continues. We'll continue with our reporting, our TA calls, and other events. And on November 30th, the award period ends. So all activities have to be done and complete by November 30th, and all final reports submitted. So all the grant period is August through November. Anything April through July is pre-application and application submission and decision time. And now I'm going to hand it over to my wonderful colleague from NYJN, Maria.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Melissa. I'm Maria Leon. I'm a consultant with NYJN. So throughout this process, you'll probably be hearing more from me. And if you become a grantee, you'll definitely be hearing more from me. So we're going to go into the different components of the application so you can get an idea of what we're looking for and what to expect. So the application process is beginning, and nobody ever comes to my door and someone is now knocking, so we're going to ignore them. So the application process begins on April 1 and goes through May 31st. And so these 5 different areas are what we'll be looking for: your information, project title, the goals and your target audience. We'll be asking who your partners are. And then we'll just ask some logistical information as well. And this is the landing page when you go to the application. To that link that is in the chat is where you will fill out all this information. by May 31st, 2059. So who is eligible to apply? Any private, public, government-based, community-based, or nonprofit organization, institution, or coalition is eligible to apply. For-profit organizations are also eligible to apply. However, you cannot include a profit in your application. And all applications, in alignment with the priorities that Melissa just talked about, must demonstrate how young people with lived experience and lived expertise are partners or leaders in the planning and implementation of the project. Every grantee is going to need to obtain a UEI number, a unique entity identifier. So a UEI number is not needed at the time of application. So if you don't have one right now, that's okay. You don't need it to apply. If you are selected, you will need one. And you can go to sam.gov, content/entity registration, to obtain one. And there's two different processes. There is a registration. You don't need to register for this process. You just need to have the number. It's a free process, and it'll walk you through it. And takes about 5 to 7 days is what the information right now online is saying. So you'll just keep that in mind as you go through, but it's free. You can apply if you do not already have one. However, you may have a partner who already has one. So that's something to keep in mind. And the project goals, so you'll see these kind of reiterated throughout the application and as you saw in the introductions. And we'll be asking you to describe your project goal, your priority, and your intended impact. So what is the intention of the project? Who are you trying to reach? And we're really going to be prioritizing projects that raise awareness or increase engagement around at least one of the following. So the JJDPA, improving the youth legal system, increasing opportunities for system-involved youth, and supporting system improvement for young people. So those are the large buckets that we're prioritizing, in addition to the demographic priorities that we discussed earlier. So that's the project goal section of the application. The second, or the third, I guess, area of the application are the partners. And so we'll be asking you to list out your organizations and their role and responsibility. So we actually have a potential partner idea list in a resource folder. We'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But your partners, you're not limited to who your partners are or how many you have, but we want you to be thoughtful given the timeline and be thinking about who, if maybe one has a UEI number already, as well as the fact that this is a reimbursement-based grant. And so ensuring that there is a partner that is able to cover those costs initially to be reimbursed later. But we want you to think broadly about who your partners can be. It doesn't have to just be your SAG or a local justice agency or a coalition. These can be churches, student groups, PTAs, parks and recreation, your local library, art galleries. We don't want you to feel limited in this. And again, we will be prioritizing applications. So if you are an entity that does not have young people with lived expertise in your group, then you might want to think about who can you partner with to ensure that you have that as part of your project. The next section goes into the project timeline. And you don't need to have specific dates. Obviously, for some events, that is going to be critical to have an exact date. But we're really looking for timelines, or for a broad timeline with benchmarks and time frames. So you'll be asked to upload a proposed timeline, and there's a template there, or you can use your own. And again, have those benchmark dates for key tasks, the partners responsible for each task. And as a reminder, YJAM is kind of extended this year from October to August 1st to November 30th. And so projects have to be complete by November 30th. And then the last big logistical piece is the budget, the big fun B word. So applicants are going to be asked to upload a budget. And again, there is a template in the application for you to use, or you can use your own. And you'll see an example of budgets later on in the examples as well. And so you'll need to include the numerical request as well as a narrative justification for allowable expenses in the application, and then on the FAQ sheet at that youthjusticeactionmonth.org website. The allowable and unallowable expenses are both listed there for you to use as a reference point as you're creating your budget, and to make sure that you're not spending money on things that you will not be reimbursed for. And it's also helpful to think about in terms of who you may need to partner with. If there are certain things that you cannot be reimbursed for, is there a partner that does have a budget for that or could make that donation as you think about your project as a whole? So again, you can use the project budget template provided in the application, or you can upload your own. But that is something we'll be looking for. And after you submit all of your application material by May 31st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, this is how every application is going to be scored. So as Melissa said, it's going to be scored by a neutral panel of reviewers, including young people, family, state advisor group members. They will not know your name, your organization name. It'll be a blind review, so that information will not be privy to them. And application or mini grants will be awarded to the top applicant in each state, territory, or tribal community. The remaining awards, since there's, that is not up to the 100, there will be some remaining rewards left to give, and those will be dispersed according to the highest scoring application. Everyone will be notified of a funding decision by mid-July, and you can see the criteria on the right aligns with the priorities and the application. So is the proposed project in the community that's disproportionately impacted by the youth justice system, families impacted by the youth justice system, and features culturally specific programming? The reviewers are going to rate 1 from no, they really didn't, to 5, yes, absolutely, this does exactly that for each of the criteria here. And that is going to produce a total score out of 30. And we'll have at least 3 reviewers for every application. So we'll take the average of those scores, and that'll be the application score. So we'll be looking for that number from each reviewer, and they'll provide additional recommendations and notes and narratives on each application. And we'll put that up on the website for you to see what you're going to be scored on as you complete the application. So funding is going to be provided on a reimbursement basis, and we really want you to consider this as you think about your potential partners. You'll also need to make sure that you have documentation for allowable expenses, that those will be submitted as part of the final report. And we'll go into much more detail when grants are given out, so that you feel prepared and know exactly what is going to happen with your money that you are receiving. And but we do want to note that it is going to include submitting an invoice. It'll be reviewed to be approved, and then the processing, which can take up to 10 business days. So we want you to just have all that information now as you think about what you will propose, your partners, and your timeline. For the reporting, we're going to have monthly check-in calls starting in August. Prior to each check-in call, there is going to be about a 5-minute survey, and that is going to help. That is going to allow you to report on your progress, the challenges that you're facing, your expenses, and have an opportunity to request additional technical assistance. And we are going to take the results from that, what everybody is telling us, to build an agenda for TA calls. In addition to that, we will have a final report, and there will be a template for the final report. and it is going to include the budget, the reimbursement, all of that good stuff. We'll provide a sample. However, we also are inviting you and would love for you to report in a creative way of your choosing. So a list of criteria will be included. That is going to be in the template, but you can also choose to present that and report on those things in a different format. And we kind of hope you do. So more details will be given about that in TA calls so that you feel prepared and as we go along this process. The TA calls, again, are going to be held once a month starting in August. A calendar is going to be provided to grantees when awards are made, so you know what is happening. At least one representative from each grantee is required to attend the call. So one person from your team will need to be there. And they're going to be based on what we're receiving from those surveys, from that feedback, and making sure that you have the support to complete the grant requirement. Now I'm going to hand it to Tracy, who is going to get into some examples.
Hello again, everyone. Maria, thanks for walking us through the application process. I'm going to just run through a few examples of potential projects. These are not the only ideas that can be presented. We know that youth with lived experience have the best ideas, and we encourage you to engage with youth in the planning and implementation of your projects. And we're here to offer strategies for authentic and supportive youth engagement in that process. So again, these are just our examples of ideas that you can put forth in your mini grant applications, but please know it's just to kind of get your creative energies going. So this first example that we have is for a book club. We also thought like it could be like a podcast as well. And you see this one has the goal of raising public awareness about the treatment of Black and Brown youth in the legal system. This particular example includes working with a local church. Again, as Maria talked about, someone in that partnership will need to get that UEI number. Here's just a simple presentation of a timeline starting in July, August, ending up with the book club meetings occurring weekly through August and September and October. And again, just a sample budget that includes books and like a church rental space or something. So moving on to our next example is a film screening. And so this particular example has you screening a film, partnering with a local advocacy organization, identifying a location. This one we chose Busboys and Poets in DC, but it could be any location that you choose in your area. In the past, we have done film screenings at colleges. Sometimes there are small local theaters that are willing to partner with you to do film screenings, and then a panel discussion. And so the panel discussion, you can identify young people who have been impacted and have some perspective on the film to speak. We've reached out to college professors to be speakers, other advocates in the community as well to be speakers at something like this. And again, there's just a simple timeline presented as an application, as an example for you from August with the event occurring in October, and sample ideas for what might be involved in the budgeting process for a project like this. I'm going to move on to the next one. This one is a Instagram takeover, which is a new idea for me. If you have not heard of what an Instagram takeover is, it's an idea where you partner with someone on Instagram to highlight and spread awareness about an issue or topic. And the concept is that by partnering with someone who has a larger or a different sort of following or audience than you do on your social media, that the issue or topic will be amplified. And so there are examples on the internet if you are to Google how to do an Instagram takeover. But again, here we just have this listed as an example, who you could potentially partner with. We said like celebrities and influencers. It could be like your local celebrities, local athletes to help you get involved and spread awareness around the 50th anniversary in YJAM. Again, just a simple timeline, and then a budget. Next example. This last example that we have for you is a Know Your Rights sort of seminar series with young people. Again, identifying sort of when these events would occur, what your goal is, who you would be partnering with in an idea like this, and presenting a timeline. I will say something that we also did that sort of this level of a project is we partnered with CJJ last year to do a toolkit around engaging young people in state policy roundtables. And so we'll have some resources available, and there's a toolkit on that, and there's a webinar on that. And that's also an idea that would kind of fit in this section. So again, these are just some examples that we provided, and there we know that there are no limits to the creativity of our young people. And I think the next slide is on resources. Yep, and there'll be some links to resources provided on our website that will give you more information and additional thoughts and ideas. And again, we're always here to reach out to us if you need assistance with your application. And with that, I'm going to shoot it back to Maria.
So the TLDR of everything, applications close at 11:59 on June 5th, Eastern time. You can apply online at that TFA forms link. And we've added an option where you can save progress so that you don't have to just to make it easier on everybody, honestly. You can visit that youthjusticeactionmonth.org website for all of the information. Everyone who has applied will receive a funding decision by mid-July. The application period or the award period is from August 1st to November 30th. So even though a lot of these are YJAM events, because it's JJDPA's 50th year, we are kind of extending, as Courtney said, that month to cover this whole award period. So your event can take place beginning in August all the way through November 30th. You'll have to, you or a partner will be required to obtain a UEI number, attend monthly TA calls, and complete all the reporting requirements. And that is my email down there. So if you have any questions related to the mini grant or the application process, please feel free to reach out at any point. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I know there were a few in the chat. So there was a question about would something like program scholarships or continuing education opportunities be appropriate, and their speaking fees? Yes. So yes, gift cards, incentives like gift cards can also be used as a stipend. And so you can go and check again that link to allowable and unallowable expenses. And if you have a question, you can come off mute or you can put it in the chat.
I have a question. So let's say it is kind of like it is a big project that's statewide, and there's kind of like multiple aspects of the project. And let's say, multiple partners obviously as well, and there's different partners handling different parts of that project. Would folks be automatically disqualified if it's technically like one or the other be disqualified if it's technically part of one project but different aspects of it, or is that still eligible? So let's say like one org is, in charge of holding one event or the main event. One org is in charge of handling all of like the, I don't know, different pieces that might lead up to that event.
You can both apply. They would be separate projects. And so, and because of the limited time frame, we understand that every project, there are things already happening that extend before or after. And so we would just ask that you would apply and kind of frame your project to exist within this time frame. And so we should note that in the allowable and unallowable expenses that you can provide stipends and but you cannot pay staff if it's already part of their job. So if somebody is doing something extra in addition to what they would normally be doing, where they would be receiving a stipend, then that is allowable. But if it's part of their job already, then the funds cannot be used for that. But if they're separate, if the projects are submitted as they might be part of this larger project, but if you're submitting one on a really specific component and then another is doing another specific aspect, that's fine. They'll just come through as specific or as individual projects. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. My question wasn't the clearest because I couldn't figure out how to form it. But yeah, I hear that it's direct expenses, not indirect, which would include like salary and stuff like that. I was thinking more of like, I think I have my answer. I was thinking like, let's say, one org is in charge of like holding different, sorry, y'all, if you could hear that ring. Let's say one org is in charge of like handling, an art project and they're holding different workshops. And then in the end, another org is in charge of like holding a lobby day. Those could be two separate.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that's a good question. Caesar?
Yeah, peace. Cesar Casamayor from ASIA Fresno. My question was, can we do an entrepreneurial project to sustain the equipment that will be purchased? Like, for example, a mobile car wash and car detail that you will have to buy the equipment would be for the vacuum, right? That costs like $200. My point in saying all this is that we'll be able to propose something like that, to be able to buy like the equipment to help youth, and this is youth specifically who've been just as involved.
Right. I would have to actually go back and look because I was just looking at it yesterday. And I'm trying to remember which on that link, there are some specific examples given, and I don't want to give you a wrong answer now. So if you could email me, then
Sure.
I can check and get back to you.
All right, thank you.
I see a few questions in the chat that I am trying to read as well. Courtney and Brock, if you see any that you have answers to, feel free to jump in also. And Caroline, don't want to leave you out.
So one of the questions is, what federal number are you referring to? You said the organization should have it. It's,
So there was the EIC
I guess,
number, right?
The UEI, I think.
That was it. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Would it be helpful for me to read out the questions in the chat?
Yes, because they're coming in
Okay.
and moving online.
So I'm not sure if we've gotten to some of, so I'll just read them, and if you've already answered, you could just say next one. So did we answer Jacqueline's question about
the answer my first one, yes. So I still have two others after, but yes.
Okay, perfect. And then there was a question that came in from a youth-led group that is not rated. They're completely grassroots and youth-led, and so they wanted to know, did they get a UEI number? Would they have to register first? Like, what would they do?
There's a few different ways that you can do that. So you can yourselves apply for a UEI. You don't have to register, you just need the number. You might think about finding a partner who already has one, and they might also be able to handle your expenses. So, it just moved on mine.
Yeah, just real quick while you're talking, it's a process, so it takes a minute. So if you don't have one, I can't say the exact length of time that it takes, but when we apply, because it replaced the old number that we used to use, the old vendor's number. I forgot what it was called, but they rolled this out like about a year and a half ago, I think it was. But anyway, you have to apply for it. It took us, I want to say, at least about a few weeks to a month. I can't remember the exact date, but it's not something you just log on and get it like right then. So it's definitely, if your project's not starting till, August or whenever, you probably have time to attain one between now and then. The sooner the better, but it is a process. You do have to fill out some paperwork and some different things and apply for it.
Yeah, I put the link that you had put back in the chat, and I know that our organization had one that I was surprised that we had, but I don't know if that helps anybody, but.
Yeah, thanks, Clinton and Jacqueline. And they've told us that, yeah, it depends on how many applications they're trying to process to get one, but it can take, as somebody put in, 4 to 6 weeks to get. So we do recommend either finding a partner that already has one or beginning that process now.
I think
There's a
most education institutions have them, just our public education, I should say.
And if you don't have one, I would recommend that you get one if you're not a public education or government age of some sort. If you're a nonprofit like we are, just a single entity, I would recommend it because most of the funders with this type of funding is going to require you have that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
There's a question from Jerica, who says we're planning to host community engagement outreach events for gang-involved youth clients of one of our programs. So if we did this, would we need to make it educational in some way?
My assumption just in reading that is that there is already education that's probably already occurring. And you can think of education in a very broad sense. It doesn't have to be like opening a textbook and saying, here are the learning outcomes. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be straight education, but it could be raising awareness about just raising awareness in general.
Sorry, can I just clarify that for a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm actually not the one doing this. I'm just the grant writer. So if I sound stupid with that question, I apologize.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So from my understanding, it's more of like a way for the youth to gather, because that is one of their identified barriers keeping them from not being involved in gang activities. So it's more of like one of the ideas that the program director said was like basically like a block party sort of thing, like something that they can feel like they're not being talked at, basically. Like we don't want them feeling like it's an educational thing. We want them to be able to gather with their friends and have a safe place to do that with, age appropriate content, of course. It's more like those types of events. So I just want to make sure that'd be allowable under this grant.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like it would hit some of those other criteria as well.
Great. And I have one more question, if you don't mind. Is it required to select, was it one of the technical assistance options? It says, what type of technical assistance would you anticipate needing?
You don't have to select one of those. Those are just some general ones that we heard that folks might need and have in the past. But there's also an other option. So if there are other needs that you anticipate, you can write that in, or you can just leave it. That's really just for us to think about our capacity and supporting folks.
Great, thank you.
There is another question from Sean Davis, who says, how about a community and youth focus group and listening session addressing the impacts of youth and families involved in the juvenile system, to include stipends for the youth involvement in the focus group?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Sounds great. I won't be making the funding decisions. I'll just be checking for eligibility, but I think it sounds great.
There's a question: if the organization the youth are working with is already working on a campaign, are they able to submit a request for funding to cover a project or event related to that existing campaign?
It can be related, but it cannot already be funded, if that makes sense. So it's not doubling up, essentially, or double dip.
Do the events and programs need to have a particular broad reach, or could it be something like a mentoring program?
It can be something like a mentoring program.
Awesome. Does applying with more than one application affect chances of receiving a grant?
Depends on how you look at it. Because the top application from every state will be granted one. In some ways, you could be increasing your chances, and then it's a yes and no, if that makes sense.
And as for the question, so if it's already funded, is it not eligible? I would highly encourage you all, if that's a question, to look up the federal rules on supplanting, because OJJDP and the Department of Justice are pretty strict on their supplanting rules.
There was a couple more. What about training programs for people who work with justice involved youth?
I think for that, it would go back to Brock's statement right there about whether or not that training is already being funded, and if that would be considered supplanting.
Yeah, if it's already being funded through like state funds and you replace those state funds with federal funds, that's definitely not allowed. That's called supplanting, and it's a big no-no with the federal government.
My program specifically is a continuing education program for people who work with justice involved youth, but it's participant paid, so it's self-pay. So I was more curious to see if we could offer like scholarships to help more community-based organizations take advantage of it, because as of now, it's a lot of like lawyers and DOJ and those people. So we're trying to also reach the people who are a little bit more down in the trenches, so to speak, but they don't have the funding. So but it's an existing program, so I don't think it would be eligible. Sorry, I'm not working from home. Sorry.
Give me just a second and I will drop the link in the chat to their rules and regulations.
While Brock is dropping that link, someone asks if you can use funds for speaker fees.
Yeah, depending on whether or not it falls under a stipend, but if it's a speaker who is already a staff member and that falls under their position, then no.
Okay. And then someone asks, will there be help for creating an evaluation process for the projects?
Yes. And so I don't know if that question is specifically for if it's a technical assistance aspect, or if it's for reporting, but TA is available for, yes. Yeah. Yes, it's available for you.
I think Noah has a question. They want to come off mute.
Hey everybody, thank you for accepting the question. I heard you earlier mention that if someone's already being paid or compensated for those responsibilities, that cannot factor in. If we wanted to bring in an external partner, but at a subsidized rate to provide a service, would that count as that, or is that possible?
It depends on if that person is going to be doing a job that's already being done with the organization. It's if it's a bringing on a new person to do something new for the organization, no, that's not supplanting. If you're pulling state and local funds and paying for it with federal funds, that's a no. It does get a little sticky, Noah. I dropped that the federal financial guide in the chat. I would definitely refer to the supplanting part of that for more information.
Got you. Okay, I just want to confirm that. And is the funding long term, or is it an annual thing, or how does I don't know if it was mentioned earlier in the conversation, but is there a timeline on using the funding?
By November 30th. So August 1st to November 30th.
Got you. Thank you.
There's another question that came in the chat. Is it a requirement or recommendation to include community partners?
It's a recommendation based on the criteria. So you will be scored based on the strength of partnerships if they're needed, but you may not necessarily need community partners. So it's a recommendation if it fits the goals of your activity.
Could you give an example of an item that wouldn't be reimbursable?
Yes, I can. It's a little sadder. It's my saddest one. So food is not reimbursable. And so I know you
That's so
and me both. It's
important for
devastating. I
engagement.
know.
Okay.
I know. And so I think that's where it's really important to think about partners. And so say you're doing the community fair. I don't know if that was one of the examples we went over. But one way you might think about this is inviting local food truck vendors, or another local food provider, or maybe one of your partners is able to cover that cost and not be reimbursed for it. If you were doing the book club or the podcast club, you might be able to, if you trust the people. I don't know that I would do this with everybody, but you could turn it into a potluck. But I think you'd have to be very careful with. So that's an example. But so you definitely will want to take a look at that as you are building your budget. Yeah, and travel as well. So we're not flying people first class on this for this mini grant project.
Yes, no, I was just saying, I seen that skimming through the application. I'm like, okay, you guys do pay for traveling though. It's just like you all are not getting first class per diem.
Yeah.
So I get that. And I feel like that's pretty awesome that you have it listed in the application as well. So we can go back and cross-reference when, trying to create a budget or looking over how to go about things.
Yeah. Yeah, and so definitely use those resources. And if there is something where you're like, I'm not sure, and you want us to look at your budget before you submit it, we're happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And hey, Miss Tucker. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm being.
No, Tracy deserves all the love.
Hey.
Any other questions? These are really good questions. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're all we're hoping that this 6 p.m. call will
Sorry,
go to
I
7.
have one question.
Yeah.
Will there be any opportunity for feedback on applications?
If you submit it to us, are you talking formal or informal?
Informal would even be great.
Yeah, if you reach out to us, if you put something together or have a question, we're happy to look at it and say, yes, this is within the parameters. Since we won't be, especially because we will not be the ones reviewing it and scoring it, we are happy to say, yes, this is in alignment with, what's happening or with what we're looking for. Definitely. And Laura, to your question, I'm trying to type and speak at the same time, but I can't. But in the resources folder, we're constantly building I think it's called resource list. I forget the exact title of the document. But there are books, there's podcasts, there's films and shows. So there are some recommendations as far as media material goes. And there's something else in there too that I'm forgetting. potential partners that I mentioned earlier. So yeah. And if you all have recommendations on things, we're happy to add and build that as we go.
I have a question as well. If in the event that people have subsequent questions that they ask, like the example you just gave in terms of feedback, is there a place where you will post the response to those questions so that everyone can have access to that same information?
Yeah, we are. So that's one of the things with using the Google Drive is that we can easily edit those. So if we get a lot of questions that are on one topic, we will add that directly to the FAQs and mention and let everybody know when that's been asked or updated. Any other questions? Or I don't know if Tracy, Brock, or Melissa had additional thoughts to add.
Everyone, nothing additional for me. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to getting your applications. And again, if you need help, please reach out.
We're so excited to see what comes from all of the communities. And we're really excited to be a part of this partnership. So please keep your questions coming and email them to Maria throughout the process if you have any questions. Thank you for joining us tonight after work for many of you, or in the middle of your day for some of you. And please use the youthjusticeactionmonth.org website for any of the resource support and FAQ needs you might have along your journey. And we look forward to seeing your applications.